All right, welcome to a special emergency podcast edition of Inside the Birds TV. Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan, ITB TV, of course, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. And we do this emergency pod because, well, there's an emergency here. The Eagles made a huge trade, Adam. Second year in a row, the Eagles make a draft-related trade several weeks before the draft. So I'll just give the details here for those who are living in a cave. The Eagles and the Saints have made a deal. The Eagles have given up the 16th and 19th pick that they had in the first round, along with a 6th round pick, 194th overall, to get in return the Saints' 18th overall pick, along with a 3rd and a 7th round pick, 101 and 237, along with a future first round pick next year and a 2024 second round pick. Now, that's a lot of words and picks. Basically, the Eagles gave up one of their first round picks this year, got another one in return. So they only have two now, but they have that future first that you and I kind of thought that they were going to wind up doing. We've talked a billion times about don't expect the Eagles to make 3 first round picks.
Everyone knew this. Yeah. Any Eagle fan knew that the chances of them keeping all 3 were next to none. Mm-hmm. Now, did we know what was going to happen necessarily? No, but what happens, we have what are called trade calls. They start basically, the way I understand it is they start actually at the combine. Not everyone talks to each other then, but a lot of teams talk to each other. I'll give you an example. This is where the DeMarco Murray trade with the Eagles happened, when they trade him to, was it Tennessee?
It was Tennessee, yeah.
Right. They actually started talking there, but what happens is you start getting an idea, hey, we may want to move this, for example, hypothetically. Let's talk as we get closer. And just so happens the Saints need a lot of work. Sean Payton's gone. There'll be some changes with Dennis Allen being the head coach. You have now a defensive head coach. Marcus Williams is gone. They have uncertainty at quarterback for the future. Not so much this year, but they have uncertainty for the future. They need. It's funny. My first thought is that maybe Rager would be included in this trade because they need help at wide receiver, but that's not the case.
Right.
There were no players involved in this trade. So I would ask you, what I know you were doing the Mike Gill show at 4, so it just broke when you were on there when the Eagles announced it. But what was your first overall reaction?
Yeah, my first overreaction was, wow, the Eagles did it again as far as making this kind of a trade several weeks before the draft, which if you're going to make that trade, you're probably really happy with the compensation you're getting, because we all know on draft night, that Thursday night first round, when you're in the position that you're in and you think that somebody wants to trade back into the first round, and 15 is a good spot this year to be in, for a quarterback, you'll wait it out because you'll expect to get a future first rounder. And they already got that with the Saints. And so to me, the other thought that came to me was it's not surprising that these two teams made this deal for something you already said. I mean, you have one team in New Orleans that had a seat at the Deshaun Watson table, and then they were politely excused.
Right.
The Eagles wanted a seat at the Deshaun Watson table, and they were not invited. So they both have quarterback uncertainty, whether people want to acknowledge this or not. The Eagles have quarterback uncertainty. And much like we've talked about, with this not being a great quarterback class, nobody most likely going in the top 5, or at least not having top 5 talent, that we figured the Eagles might have an eye on a quarterback next year in the draft. And this, of course, will give them the opportunity to have 2 first-round picks next year to maneuver, while also still maintaining their goal this year of having a lot of picks. They now have 5 picks in the top 101 and plenty of ability now with some of the extra compensation to continue to maneuver up the draft if they want to.
I mean, think about it. Not only do they get a first for next year, they get the extra second rounder in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. So let's go over what they have this year. 15 and 18 overall, 18 obviously from the Saints. They have number 51 overall in the second round, number 83 overall in the third round, number 101 from the Saints trade, and that one, by the way, is a compensatory pick. 4th round pick, 124 overall, 3 fifths, 154, 162, 166, and a 7th rounder, number 237 overall from the Saints. They still have 10 picks. They had 10 before this trade. They have 10 now. Yes, they gave up one of the 3 first rounders, but here's another key. They didn't give up 15. That was the top of the 3 picks.
Right.
They kept 15. So, and here's another thing. As you first reported last week, they're going to have Sauce Gardner in. Now, we know he's going to top 10. He won't get anywhere close to 15.
Right.
But they have the ammunition if they so choose. And you're going to hear Greg Cosell, we just taped within the last hours, our next the Intel with Cosell. And wait till you hear him talk about Ahmad Sauce Gardner. My goodness gracious. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, yeah. And look, he's pretty fond of Derek Stingley as well. So if you're talking about a player, whether it's Stingley, whether it's a pass rusher who, like Kayvon Thibodeau, who you thought might go top 10, but all of a sudden they're looking at 11, 12, 13, and you have the 15 and the 19, or you have your 15 and several other lower picks that you can package, you have maneuverability to do whatever you want to do. That's what the Eagles did last year. Right. They were a little bit different. They had the 5th overall pick, I think. They moved down with Miami to 12 and then wind up moving up to 10. So the Eagles have so many options to A, maneuver, but B, still improve their team in a lot of areas because they have several picks among the top 101. And Adam, I'm telling you, we had this argument on our podcast that dropped Monday morning. Now that you got looking at 5 picks in the top 101, linebacker and safety, man, I'm telling you, it might happen.
Well, it won't be in the first round, but yeah.
No, not first round. No.
Well, here's the thing. They have 3 picks in the top 51. Mm-hmm. If they keep all 3, then we might as well move this forward here. Mm-hmm. I'm still thinking corner, defensive lineman, obviously DE, and wide receiver with the first 3 picks. However they do that is whoever the best players on the board, if they stick to their board.
Right.
Wide receiver is very deep, but we know they want to do something big at receiver. They've already tried twice. Actually, they tried twice with 2 big names, Allen Robinson and Ridley, but it wasn't as those weren't the other 2 receivers that they were in on. So we know they're going to try to do that, and they could address other needs later. And now, quarterback next year, no one has any idea what it's going to look like next year. I mean, I don't think the next group next year could be worse than this one in terms of what it looks like from NFL people. Mm-hmm. But that's another story for another time. No one has any idea who's going to come out for the draft. Nobody has any idea how good these guys are going to be next year. But they have certainty this year in terms of knowing 3 picks in the top 51. They can address their major needs, which we addressed on today's show, which you can hear on every platform. And the great thing is, Wednesday morning when you wake up at 6 a.m. Eastern, or if you're on the West Coast at 3 a.m. Eastern, for the farmers out there, or you've early shift, you can hear Greg go over on pod form. I don't know how we hit in fact, it's the longest show we've done with Greg. It was an hour. It was an hour for you people, for everybody who plays. We don't do shows an hour. We got you covered. We did an hour with Greg. Can't wait for that one to hit.
Wednesday morning, that will be out on the Inside the Birds platform, podcast first, Friday, YouTube. This feels like a trade that the Saints probably initiated. Just based on the Saints are the team that wanted the extra first-round pick. They most likely want to do something at quarterback. I would think that's why they gave up. You don't give up a future first to go and get yourself a nice defensive tackle unless the Saints, I mean, I think that they're probably going to want to do something there. So it feels like a trade that the Saints probably initiated, without any intel or knowledge on that. I'm just kind of reading the tea leaves here.
Well, let's put it this way. They moved Taysom Hill to tight end. Mm-hmm. Jameis Winston is the presumed starter with Andy Dalton as a backup. They've got Blake Bortles and Ian Book also on the roster. But that doesn't give you much certainty for the future. Mm-hmm. Receiver-wise, Michael Thomas has been hurt quite a bit last year, particularly with the multiple surgeries on his ankle. Marquez Callaway was an undrafted free agent 2 years ago. Decent player. Traquan Smith was brought back. But, they don't have that big-time explosive receiver. Michael Thomas is a possession receiver. Mm-hmm. Defense, still going to be pretty good. Don't have – I mean, they still – they're good at DN. They've got 4 guys. They really like Peyton Turner, who they drafted in the first round last year out of Houston. Right. But, quarterback, you're right. I mean, they don't have a lot of – you want to get certainty. You hate to be in that quarterback purgatory where you don't know who the future is. And which amazing. Sean Payton leaves and they move Taysom Hill to tight end. And by the way, they still own his base salary for next year became fully guaranteed a couple weeks ago. So they're going to basically have to keep Taysom Hill through next season.
Amazing. So let's look at this from another quarterback perspective. If you're Jalen Hurts, you probably feel even better right now that this is your year coming up. The Eagles are not taking a quarterback,
Yeah.
but the pressure's also on you. You are not guaranteed 2023. In
Yep.
fact, you have to play really darn well to be able to convince the Eagles, right, that they're not gonna package these picks or do whatever they got to do to get themselves their next future quarterback. That's got to be the takeaway from this.
Yeah. I mean, we both agreed in the last months, if it wasn't Wilson or Watson, it would be Hurts. That's where we're at. The big one was Watson, as you said. They didn't get a seat at the table with
Mm-hmm.
Watson, who was interested, and they move on. And they've got a lot of picks. They've got a lot of needs, which we outlined on today's show. I know a couple people don't necessarily agree with what we said, but that's okay. It's reasonable minds could disagree, as Greg Cosell says.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, they have a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of good picks early in the first 3 rounds. They've got 5 picks,
Mm-hmm.
so they're in good shape. 2 1s, two 3s. So they could address some needs. They just have to get it right. That's the key, is getting it right. They have to get it right.
Yeah, see, I like those extra picks that they got, like the second round pick in 2 years. That really could be a nice little carrot to dangle. If not this year, maybe next year
That
if
too,
you need to
sure.
package your 2 first rounders and that. But so I have a feeling that that's what that'll be used for. If not, I mean, it gives you some flexibility this year if you want. But they really have a lot of different options, and they're able to do nothing changes about what they want to accomplish with this trade. If anything, they just fortified themselves for the future. So that's really good. Again, you for when we try to go through this on the podcast with people, and unfortunately, a couple of our future pods are now destroyed by this trade because we were going to go through the history of teams that had 3 or more first round picks and then also look at 15, 16, and 19 and all the players taken there over the years to see if that kind of grouping would have really been a big difference for the Eagles. We'll have to regroup on that. But in my studies in doing that, it's sort of the gift and the curse. Not a lot of teams who had 3 or more first round picks over the last 10 or 12 years can definitively look back and say, we mastered that draft. We really capitalized on the draft. Some of them hit because they had a top 5 pick in there. But overall, when you looked at all 3, you would say there was a lot left to be desired from that.
Remember what you said to Howie Roseman at his podium press conference. Do you want to refresh or let the listeners know what you said to Howie? Boy, the face that he made, I was there. I saw it.
Yeah, no, it was funny because it was at the combine, and I specifically asked him about the history because knowing how into analytics and research and precedent that he is, I wanted to know how that would influence this year's draft. And I reminded him that teams that had 3 or more first round picks, when you look at it, did not overwhelmingly do well with those picks. Just for perspective, Cleveland one year had 3. Now they had the number 1 overall pick, so Myles Garrett worked out for them. But their 2 other picks were Jabril Peppers and David Njoku. You would not call those franchise, changing type of picks. One guy's not even with the team anymore. The Giants had 3 first round picks, right? And they wound up taking was it the Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence, and DeAndre Baker? I think bang, bang, bang right there.
Oh, Baker, terrible miss.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, Baker's not even with the team anymore. Lawrence is okay. Dexter Lawrence is okay. He's a pretty good lineman, but Daniel Jones is on a prove it year basically with the new staff. So there were a couple of other examples where you just looked and said that this just it's not. You were hoping for so much more, but you didn't get that.
What the Jets trade? I mean, when the Jets had, there was a 3 or 4,
They had
4
4.
first round.
Yeah,
It was my buddy Anthony Beck,
mm-hmm. He was
Chad
the last
Pennington,
of the 4, right? Chad
right?
Pennington was the third of the 4.
Who are the other 2? Without looking,
Sean Ellis and John Abraham.
Abraham, home run, great player.
That's it though. 1 out of 4.
Yeah,
I mean, let me rephrase that because Chad
Yeah.
Pennington took them to the playoffs. He was actually a pretty good quarterback.
Blew his shoulder out so many times, or he'd been really good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you kind of feel like when you get 4 first round picks that you are on the pathway to being a dominant team and you're really going to rebuild the core. And even Abraham, they couldn't keep for very long. He wound up going to Atlanta and then somewhere else. So, I mean, it just never worked out for them because they've not been a great organization. Same thing with Cleveland and same thing with the Giants.
It's weird. It just, I loved it. By the way, I still want you to, if you still have that information, not today, right now, but I'd love to still go over that.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just very curious the history of because it does give you clues, and it may be a reason why the Eagles, because they use analytic numbers, they see the percentage of hit rate of having so many first round picks, and I remember Bill Polian said the best of the best in the evaluation business are at best 50% of first round picks. So think about it. With your
Right.
information, if you're saying it's mixed at best, you're probably going to miss. You
Sure.
know,
And that was part of Howie's answer that you wanted me to elaborate on what he said. He
yeah,
laughed when I told him that. He said, "Thanks for reminding me." And I said, "Hey, it's not like you made those picks. It's not your
yeah,
fault."
yeah,
And then he went on and said, the big thing in trying to look at teams that have these multiple first round picks is, well, where are they picking? Because as he knows, as we've talked about a lot, you get like the majority of your, this isn't going to shock anybody, but you get the majority of all pro guys, Pro Bowl guys in the top 10 of the draft. And then there is a drop off from like 10 to 15, and then another drop off from 15 to 20 and beyond, to the point, Adam, where when you start looking at 16 to 32, you'll see a lot of misses. You'll just see a lot of guys who probably had second round grades, but there weren't 30, there weren't 25 first round graded guys. So when you're picking 15, 16, and 19, as great as that might sound, 3 first round picks, you're also talking about 3 picks that on their own probably have a hit percentage of less than 60%, maybe even less than 50 when you get down to 19. So to me, I still look at the Eagles here at 15 and 18, and with all the picks they have and knowing Howie's mindset, you saw it last year too. I wouldn't be surprised if he's packaging some, maybe not both first rounders, but really trying to move up if a guy he likes falls within reach where he doesn't have to give
yeah.
up everything.
Typically, corner's not a guy. Corners don't go super high. Typically, top 10.
Right.
But Sauce Gardner is so special.
Yeah.
He would be a guy to trade up for if they wound up doing it. I would think that would be a guy that they would, if they're willing to do that. We're so far away from the draft. We're just over 3 weeks. We don't know yet what they're going to do with his 2 firsts if they keep both firsts. I mean, we said all along. I'm sure most fans felt that Roseman's history would show he's not going to keep all 3. Just didn't think it would be this early, but so that they're down to 2, and there's that line around 13 or 14, based on what I'd heard over the week this past weekend, where there's a drop off. And what we'll do is we'll give you the groups of player, the drop offs from what we're told, kind of what the people in the league see. But this is talking to Cosell on earlier today, taping this 1 hour show, man. I was blown away, and he made such a great point that really the 3 of us talked about this. How many former high school receivers are now corners? It's unbelievable. Like, we must have named like 7 guys on the show, right?
Right. Definitely. It was a fascinating show and a really good insight. And you start to look at this draft, and I just kind of like the draft's diversity this year. Again, I don't know if there are, other than Sauce and maybe a couple of left tackles, if there are guys that are considered true elite, multi all pros, but it's good and deep in talent that can impact a team right away. And that's a good thing for the Eagles that need all the help that they can get. And at some point, Adam, we'll see if linebacker and safety, if the maybe second round, third round, we'll see. Well, we'll see if our argument.
I would say
gets settled.
safety. But safety to me is the one that, and I love what Greg says on the show. We'll just tell you we covered on this show on Wednesday. It drops with Greg on podcast. It's safety and corner, and we covered, I think, around 30 players, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that range.
Ton. Yep.
So it was just great. I cannot tell you how stoked I am to have him on board doing this thing. We're very lucky, and he loves it. And I've known him for 20 years. He doesn't usually get super enthused. He loves his work, but he's a straight line guy. He got really excited doing the show today.
Nice.
So
No,
it's
good. It's good.
Yeah.
And again, that'll be out Wednesday morning on our podcast platform. Make sure you catch it. I think that'll wrap it up basically for this emergency edition of Inside the Birds TV. For Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.